She was 4 years old. Is that a hidden daddy issue? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Is it just me, or is this lighting really great today?
Wrong love can corrupt everything.
If you learn something, pass it on, teach it to somebody. It'll stick. Boom.
Bum bum bum, joy, bum bum bum, joy, bum bum bum, joy, bum bum, joy seed.
Hey Joy fam, you're wondering why am I moving around? Because today I'm going to be talking about my exes, and for some reason I am anxious. And I realized, Tina, why are you anxious about this topic? And it's because I am generally a very private person, and I like my privacy as much as possible. And so I try to extend that to other people, because I believe you treat people as you want to be treated. And so I'm a little anxious about sharing this, but when I thought through it, my aim is not to bash these men that I've dated and that I've shared a lot of my life with, but to talk to you about what I learned, how I reflected, and how I also feel like I exited, and how more importantly, how I showed up in those relationships and what that told me about myself. So that's what this video is about. And I feel a little better now, because I've said it out loud, because all the time I was thinking about, should I do this, should I do this, will I say the wrong thing? Because I know some of the things that I will share will seem really intimate, really personal, and maybe those men will see this video, but probably not. I don't know. The world is funny that way. But today, that's what I'm going to share. I'm going to describe as best I can. I was going to say archetype, but more maybe like stereotype, or like a caricature of them, for entertainment purposes, and also to protect their identity, because I won't be saying their name. I will sort of be talking about what they do for a living, but not really, just to try and keep them as anonymous as possible. Of course, people who know me and who met me when I was dating these men will know who they are, but if you don't, you'll just know them as a stereotype or a caricature. Okay, and then at the end of this video, because I want you to stick around, I will tell you what lesson I learned from each of these men, and also why I still have so much love and respect for them to this day. Yeah, so you didn't expect that one. Okay, let's get going. Oh, and also, I forgot to mention why I'm talking about this topic about learning from my exes or my old relationships, is because I feel this is very deeply linked to mental health and how we see love and how we see companionship. And it's important, I think, to learn from the mistakes from our relationships so we don't carry that forward and then have bad habits and wonder why we're not feeling fulfilled or finding the right person. So that's the link, to the whole mental health topic, what this channel's about. Okay, let's get to it. Okay. So how am I going to structure this is that I'm going to go through each of my ex's stereotype or caricature as I described it. So I think maybe to establish a few things is that maybe where I'm coming from as from a belief system. So I grew up in a Christian household, and we definitely taught to not to have sex before marriage, and to stay away from alcohol and drugs and smoking and drinking. So in that way, a very traditional home. And I'm stating that as a fact before because my relationships influenced my beliefs in a lot of ways. And that, of course, had a different dynamic, because I didn't always date people who had the same beliefs as I did, even though I think maybe people would assume that's what I would do, but I did not. So as a premise, I just want to state that so everybody sort of understands my context where I'm coming from, and maybe why I make certain comments as I go along.
I'm Matthew Hussey. I've been coaching for 15 years, helping women in their love lives build the confidence they need to make really good decisions. To me, the saddest thing, the thing that drives me in all of this, when people say, why are you whatever you want to call me, a dating coach or whatever, why are you that thing? I think they think that I'm going to say because finding love is the most important thing in life. Actually, to me, it's not that that's the most important thing in life. It's that if you make bad decisions in that area, then the wrong love can corrupt everything in your life. You can run out the clock on your time, you can run out the clock on your energy, you become bitter, and even the good things. You can have a job you love, you can have a family you love. It will poison your energy and all of those things.
Matthew Hussey, this man is brilliant. This line that he mentioned sums it up so well. I think, why do people obsess about relationships and getting into relationships? And getting in relationships, this is the caution that we all need. The wrong relationship can poison everything, and that's why we need to learn about love, learn about relationships, learn about ourselves. And for me, I was not my best self when I was with the hippie. I definitely did not hold it against him. I know for sure that I should have walked away sooner, and that would have been good for both of us. But I was afraid. I didn't want to be alone. I thought that things could get better, and I think some ways it held us both back. But I'm not responsible for his decisions. I'm only responsible for mine, how I showed up. But I totally agree. That is why we need to be wise in love. As much as we want to lead with our heart all the time, we need to balance with the mind and the heart. Okay, let's begin with caricature number 1. I'll call him the junior academic. So why I call him junior academic is because he was very studious person. The industry that he decided to go into, he was very focused, fully applied himself, was a person who put in the long hours and who was really excellent, was headhunted in his industry, has gone on even now to I think have an unusual career in terms of a high standard, I would say. And I'm not saying this just to praise him, but just also, yes, to acknowledge his hard work, but also just to give you an idea of the type of person he is. He was very good at pushing himself and trying new things. But he also had the very healthy habit of developing his creative side. So he would make sure that he always did something creative, even though he was mainly focused on what people would term as left brain developments and pursuits. And I would describe that relationship. We started dating in high school. We actually dated twice, and I'll explain a little. So we dated in high school. I think it was for like 2 years. Started dating in what we in South Africa call grade 10, I think. So it was like 2.5 years up until like the beginning of varsity. That was in 2006, which is when we actually broke up. And I broke up with him. I just felt like we weren't giving each other the amount of attention that we used to. And I think that's natural, but I was so young that I didn't think of it that way. And I just felt neglected, and I tried talking about it, like when it started happening in the beginning, and I just couldn't take it. So then eventually I think I was just like, okay, let's just call it. And it was the hardest breakup. It felt like a physical pain for me to actually break up with this person, but I did. And we had a very friendship-based, I think, relationship. Yes, there was physical attraction. I found him very attractive, but also because he was so intellectual, and we could have deep discussions. And we also went through a lot of, I think, emotional development together, which was really important, and that brought us really together. But even on the creative sphere, we could talk about a lot of things, which was really fun. And we were a very adventurous couple in that we loved to go to new places and to try new things together. And I think that really goes a long way in creating a bond with each other when you can do that. So it was a hard one for me because that was my first healthy and long-term relationship. So I say we dated twice. There was about a 4-year gap between our first breakup and when we started dating again. And the second time around, I think we really thought it would end up in marriage, to be honest. But we decided to do around that time because he had finished his studies, he had done some work in his industry already, and he had gotten his degree. But I was a little more undecided. I had been studying interior design and I thought I really loved it, but I ended up not liking it at all. I'd done foundation art and design and experimented with different courses of different disciplines of design in that course. So they exposed you to architecture, interior design, jewelry design, what else? Fashion, surface design, industrial design. And from there, because you're exposed to it, you can really understand what the industry is about and then figure out what you want to actually focus on. And I chose interior design, even though my lecturer advised graphic design. So that led me down a different path. But the main reason why I'm mentioning this is because he could earn his degree, and when we decided, okay, let's travel together and see where we could go together, we decided, to teach English somewhere, but he could go, he had more options and more lucrative options, and I didn't want to be apart from him because that would have to mean that either he goes to a place that he earns less, and then we are together, or he goes to somewhere that's more lucrative and travels back and forth to where I am in, I think, more rural parts of China or Asia, or maybe somewhere in Thailand. So I wasn't willing to do that, and that's one of the reasons why he left and I stayed. And then the separation was hard for me because, like I mentioned before, the first time around we were very close, and the second time around the same. So we were like very good friends other than being romantically involved with each other. So it was hard for me, and that's why we broke up the second time. Yeah. So in total, I think it was like 4.5 years of dating each other. And our families were close. We did all of the typical things, the Christmases, the birthdays, all that type of thing. So it was very enmeshed. Anyway. And when your mother likes a guy, 2 people are breaking up with him. That's a story. Okay. On to the next guy. Serious boyfriend number 2 was the senior academic. Yes, you're noticing a trend. I like nerds. And that will be true. I remember I was working in retail. I think how old was I? I think it was like 2014. I had gone a little astray. Didn't know what to do after leaving interior design. I think I had gone into event management, non-profit industry, and worked in that industry for about 2 or 3 years. The company I worked for was downsizing, so they let me go, and I got into, he was one of the customers that would come into the store regularly. And it's a local mall that I worked at, and the company was called Urban Degree, and they call you a stylist. Yeah, you're a sales assistant, but it's a fancy name. Whatever. So he was a regular, and that's how we started talking. And eventually, of course, he wasn't just coming in for the clothing. I think if I think about him, he was had his doctorate at that point already. He was a professor. He was lecturing, and I think there was definitely deep admiration for the level that he'd already achieved in his life. And in some ways, I think I was insecure, like, why is this guy with me? I hadn't gotten a degree in anything at that point. I felt like I was really still searching. So I think in that way, emotionally, he had the upper hand because his life was very stable. He had his routine. He loved routine. He was a Virgo, and everybody knows a typical Virgo. They have a routine. They're generally very focused. When they decide what they want to do with their life, that's what they do with their life, and they get really good at it, and they love it until they die. She was 4 years old, and now she loved it until she retired. I mean, she does other things now, but still, she knew when she was 4. So, in that relationship, I would say I showed up very insecure in a lot of ways, because I think intellectually, which I think is kind of normal, he was, I don't know if the superior is the right word, but he definitely had an upper hand in a lot of ways. And I realized my reaction to him was very diminutive, in that I hadn't found my voice yet to really stand up for myself. I think in my previous relationship with junior academic, as we're calling him, it was a lot of respect, because we were literally 2 months apart. He was born in September and I was born in June. Is that 3? July, August, September, 3 months. And just it was almost like a level playing field, even though he had also accomplished what the world will say is more, right? There was definitely more that level of respect. But I realized for me now, it was how I saw him and how I leveled the two of us, right? It wasn't necessarily that he was always exerting it, even though sometimes he did, but I think he was just so used to defending himself, because he was also a Zulu man in a predominantly white and colored space of the academic world, actually mainly a white space, but he was excellent at what he did. His lecture rooms were often very full, very popular. He handled debate really well. Like, there was so much about this person to admire. He was well spoken, he was a handsome man, all of those type of things. And I think I fell very deeply in love with them. So when I mentioned all of these men, I fell in love with all of these men. That's why I can say I still have love and respect for them. So that's why I'm trying to speak about them as kindly as possible, and but still try and be as honest with you as I can. So I realized that's how I showed up. I was still trying to find my voice, and I dating an older man. I think he was 5 years or 6 years older than me, and I definitely wanted to date men that were older than me. And is that a hidden daddy issue? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Okay? Honestly, it totally is. And that was one thing I had to reflect on when that relationship did end. So our relationship, this is a part that's maybe a little juicy and might get me in trouble with my church family. But that was definitely a relationship where I explored my intimate life with a partner much more than I had ever done. I think I had been curious about my sexuality with other people, but never in a committed relationship. So the exploration was deeper and, of course, more loving in a lot of ways, and that's good. So I feel it developed another side of me, but because of that, I think I leaned even more on him emotionally, and looked at him for guidance in a lot of ways. He was also really generous and supportive with the things that I decided to do. Like, he would get me a laptop, or if I needed something and I didn't have the money for it, he would support me in that way. So he was a very supportive partner. And I think that also complicated it when we would have discussions, and sometimes it turned into arguments where the tables were turned, and I would be trying to express something or just talk about something that was bothering me, and at the end of the discussion I felt like I did something wrong, or that my opinion was wrong. So that was really a hard lesson from that relationship. But I will share what I learned from academic senior at the end of the video, so please don't go anywhere. So that relationship ended, I think, after 2 years. And I am not proud of this, but it did end because I cheated. Yeah, I did. And I think that was the most shameful, because before then, I was always in that person that would say, if you don't want to be with this person anymore, you should just tell them. You should respect them enough to just end it before you do it. And I didn't do it. So that was really a point of shame. And he found out, and that was why the relationship ended. It took me a long time to let go because of the guilt that I felt, because that I cheated on this boyfriend on academic senior. And yeah, that was that.
Hi, Lauren.
Hi, Shane.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Can we talk about the song of the ages?
of the ages?
It is the song of the ages.
I love you. I appreciate
I love
relief.
that song.
Thank you.
It's interesting because my podcast this week that I put out was about your 10 different soulmates. And it explores the concept of the fact that because we're not getting married at 22, 23 anymore, that lightning feeling of, oh my God, like you are my star-crossed lover happens several times in your life.
It does. I can attest to that.
Yeah.
It's happened to me many times.
How do you cope when your soulmate is now an ex?
Oh, I think like you said, there's many soulmates, you know? So I think the coping, I had already understood that this person I wasn't gonna be with this person forever. So I think that I already knew that in my body. And so I wasn't really coping with walking away from something. It was more, actually, that's a lie. I was coping with it. But I had an also deep knowing inside of me already. My body knew already that this wasn't resonating with me anymore. And it wasn't good for me anymore, you know?
Can you say more about that?
About...
Because I had a similar experience where I kept getting bacterial vaginosis, UTIs, yeast infections from a past partner.
Right.
And I went to a doctor.
Because your body was literally rejecting him.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that for me, it's more an energetic thing. It's like how I feel when I'm around you. And for me, emotional safety is really important to me in relationships. And I think I had reached a point, I was really young, you know, I was in my early 20s, like beginning of my 20s when I was with this person. So I was emotionally, I wasn't as mature as I am now. And there was just a lot of emotional volatility in the relationship because both of us had wounds that we hadn't worked on. And therefore the communication wasn't ideal. And it wasn't what I needed from a partnership in order to feel safe, in order to feel emotionally safe. And when I don't feel emotionally safe, my body starts to pull back from somebody. Like I start to not be as attracted to them, or, you know, it doesn't feel the same way that it used to. And I hold on to what I've learned also from that experience is when it's time to walk away, walking, you know, not lingering, not holding something out, not waiting until every single feeling disappears, you know, but just understanding when something isn't right for me anymore and being able to have the courage to have that honest conversation, you know, because we get comfortable in codependence. We get comfortable in, you know, what we're already doing and what is routine for us. And relationships can become that. Okay, they can become habits and routines that you're used to this person. You're used to the way you live life with this person. And it is so jarring to walk away from something that's like, we were together for 2 years, you know? So that was like a very intimate part of my life. But when you know you have to walk away, you just have to.
I also love the term walk rather than run.
Right. Yeah, it's a walk. It's a gentle leaving.
I definitely agree so much with what Lauren, the guest in this Lovers and Friends episode, was talking about. Older men do expect you to be a certain way. And when I was with academic senior, I definitely felt that expectation. And I also realized it more so after I left. And I wanted to be what he wanted me to be, because more than anything, I wanted to be loved and accepted by him. And it felt like there would be stability with him. But in the end, I was compromising myself so much for that stability. And I needed to leave, but I couldn't. So instead, I sabotaged myself. So I didn't do the gentle walking. It was very abrupt, but it was necessary. So why I call him a hippie is that he was a very outdoorsy person. He would always describe this to me and talk about where he lived, where he grew up. He was from a coastal city that before he used to go to school in the morning, he would go to the beach, he would have a swim, go back home, wash, and then go to school. He loved nature, just loved being in nature, was very good at growing plants. I'd never seen a man create such beautiful gardens just naturally, and loved to research and how to do things like that. It's one of those things I really admired about him, amongst so many other things. So how we met was, I was working as a waitress at a nightclub at the time, and he was a bartender and one of the day managers. Anyway, so we met in that environment, and I did not last very long. I think I worked there for the season, which was basically from most of December into early. Around that time, I remember having disconnected from my church family, and that was a very big source of a sense of family in my life. So when I lost that sense of family, I think I also lost what I felt were my roots, and that was really hard. I cheated on someone, and that person, even though I treated them so badly, also was a really big support. So I lost my church family, that solid relationship, the creative didn't end up being the relationship that I thought it would be, and that was really hard. From there, I always knew that he was interested in me because he wanted to start dating quite early on. You know, maybe we were friends for like 3 or 4 months, and he, I think, had asked me to date maybe 2 or 3 times during that time, and I always rejected him because I felt like we were too similar and we wouldn't complement each other. I always wanted to be with someone where I felt like we were pushing each other to be better. And that, of course, was just maybe my perspective on what that means. But I just felt like him and I wouldn't necessarily do that for each other. But he was such a beautiful person, very generous, very kind, very fun-loving, wicked sense of humor. Oh my word, and he was an amazing cook. Wow. I opened myself up in a lot of ways where I think I decided I wouldn't. I will be honest and say I went against a lot of my own values going into that relationship, and how I showed up in that relationship. And I want to make clear that I decided on that. And I decided on that because I wanted to maintain our connection with each other. I wanted us to be closer. And I think because I had lost so many people in my life, I just didn't want to lose any more people. So I did whatever I could to hold on to him. And in a lot of ways, I lost a lot of myself. And I know that it sounds like that relationship was just negative, but I'm just talking about how I showed up in the relationship. Of course, why we stayed together was because we had so many good times. We went to so many parties. We went on so many different like holiday trips and family things. It was so much fun. He was so intense in that way, and I loved it and enjoyed it so much. But the lows were very low and the highs were very high in that relationship. And I will admit that I was depressed, I think, when I met him, but I didn't realize it at the time. Because when I was at art school for my first year, when I started studying fine art, I had my first anxiety attack. And I didn't know what was happening at the time. I didn't know necessarily how to cope with it. I knew it was happening because I was really stressed about finances and I didn't know what to do. I didn't have anyone to turn to. My mother was helping me in ways that she could already. And I think I just didn't know how to think about solving the problem. And I just thought, like, I should know how to do this. Like, things should be not as hard, you know? I think I was doing modeling at the time and doing hostessing at the time. And the previous years, it was so much more lucrative. But when I needed it to be lucrative so that I could cope financially, it wasn't. It was just one of those situations where things didn't go as planned, as life happens, right? So, I say this all to talk about why I think I leaned so heavily on him and why we leaned on each other. I think he didn't tell me at first. His friend mentioned that he had been depressed for a while. his housemate mentioned it. And I think he mentioned it just so that I would understand his posture, his mindset, his habits in the past years, and just be really understanding of why he is the way it is. And I think it was actually the first time that anyone had ever framed it that way. Maybe that attitude or that type of energy, I might have been around it, but I didn't necessarily know what was going on. So he was really open, and I understood him so much more. So that vulnerability, I think, brought us even closer. And even, I think what is interesting about depression is that you can be really high functioning, or you can be someone who I feel I'm more at, like, is that you tend to withdraw, or you are low functioning. But he was still quite high functioning, even though he was depressed. And that relationship was very deep in a lot of ways. I felt safe in ways that I had never before with him. And we also were very sexually intimate with each other. And we had the same values when it came to building a relationship. He was very loyal, knew how, he was always very attentive and always looking to make me feel comfortable in his space, because we ended up living together for a lot of the relationship. Sometimes the living arrangements changed through the course of the relationship. But I think that kind of gives you a basic understanding of the relationship. And there was some trauma that happened, a loss of a parent during that relationship. And like I said, I had lost a lot of my support systems during that relationship, prior to that relationship even. So it was a lot, guys. It was a lot. And that ended because I realized I was seeking towards the end of that 4 years ways to heal myself, because I noticed all of the bad habits. I was leaning on him financially more than I should have. I was not pushing myself in my career as much as I should have. And it was because of my depression. I was seeing a psychologist. I encouraged him to. I also was pushed. I think it's fair to say pushing him to try different things, because I said, what might work for me might not work for you, but please try and find what works for you. And I realized I was driving a lot of the change, and it wasn't healthy. There has to be both partners wanting more for each other, more for the relationship, and I didn't really feel that was happening. Whether he might say that is fair or not, of course this is just my perspective on the relationship, but I ended up breaking it off because I just said we were stuck in a loop, and it's not healthy for either of us to do this. Maybe we need to grow alone instead of trying to grow together, which is ideal, but was not happening. Okay, so I think I've given you a picture of that relationship. There were very high highs and very low lows, but there was definitely love. Okay, now on to the lessons. Okay, so from the junior academic, I learned about myself, that I love nurturing my partners. If I can be helpful, if it's like advice or facts or whatever, I love to nurture and help my partner. I think that's pretty common amongst women. I think sometimes it's also like seen as like a stereotype, you know. But what I learned is that I need to do it within boundaries. I need to respect what their wishes are. When it comes to how they want to grow, that for me is what I learned from junior academic. Then from senior academic, what I really learned from that relationship is to find my voice, which I did on purpose. I used to write letters so that I wouldn't falter in what I wanted to say. And that for me was important to do. because I found the more that I pushed down what I wanted to say and didn't stick to my own word, it damaged my perspective of myself. And now I am very opinionated, but tactful and respectful when I share my opinion and my emotions. And it started after that relationship with academic senior. Yeah, that's definitely one thing that I learned and that I've held on to, and that I've tried to also teach friends if I saw that pattern as well. You know what I'm saying? If you learn something, pass it on, teach it to somebody. It will stick in your mind. I think from creative, I was like, I really thought about that one because it wasn't like a long-term relationship, but it was for me, a relationship. There was a lot of emotional intimacy. There was physical intimacy. And what I learned from that relationship is that intimacy and relationships can be really simple, guys. It really can be. It's definitely a choice on our part how simple we want it. And yeah. And I think maybe that the lesson should be simple, and that's it. Let's move on to number 4. I realized, I think, from my relationship with the hippie, is that loving someone can be complicated. And that we really have to evolve with each other. And in a lot of these relationships, I definitely feel like I didn't know that. And that's maybe why I walked away. And that's why I didn't understand what was going on, because I didn't know that I should be evolving with my partner. And that's so natural, right? You are starting dating, you want to experience love, you want to experience connection. You don't know that sometimes you have to push through the hard times, unless maybe you saw it in a healthy relationship in your home or in your community, which I come from a single parent home. So I didn't see that example really. I saw other marriages around me, but I didn't see the day-to-day of them. So it wasn't an example that I had. Both of you have to take accountability for your own traumas and your own healing. Either of you can't take responsibility for the other, which I feel like I did with him in some ways. And I don't necessarily regret it because it came from a good place, but I knew at some point that I had to stop because I was pushing. So I would say that was my biggest lesson, is to respect your partner's healing journey and allow them to take accountability for it. And how they take accountability for it is something you can't be at peace with, then you might have to remove yourself from the situation, which is eventually what I did, even though it was hard.
I have a meme that really captures it. Because it was so exciting in my younger years, and now it's kind of like, what? Yeah. It's not the same, but it's good because I'm in a healthier space, in a season of intention. Right. So because of that, the pool has gotten smaller. There you go. Mm-hmm. And that's a good thing. That is a good thing. That's a good thing because you don't waste a lot of time with things and situations that you know aren't even right. Yeah. Before I would have entertained that. So it's about self-love first. Because if you don't, I'm serious. Yes. I can't give it if I don't have it. Wow. I can't give it if I don't have it, you know. Whoever my partner will be, I have to bring my best me to the table. And I didn't realize how far off track I got. And the lack of self-love. And I came to a place where I'm like, the man I've been looking for my whole life is me. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. When we look to other people to give us something that we're void of, we set them up to fail. Yes. That's what we do. Yeah, and we set ourselves up to be very disappointed.
I resonated so much with what Cherie said at the RTT, looking for something specific in other people when realizing that I needed to correct and heal was the relationship with myself. Yes, I did spend time alone, but also being with certain people for certain periods of time really helped me. I think we can only heal how we are in relationship by being in relationships, but in healthy ones. knowing when you need to walk away. And I started learning that and realized that if I grow and always improve the relationship with myself, I am what I need. And a partner complements all of that.